Good afternoon and happy Friday, everyone. My name is Rebecca Davis, and I'm the founder and executive director of MindLeaps. And today we have another special edition of Moments with MindLeaps today. And it's somebody that I've always wanted to interview since the moment I first met her. So I'm so excited that she'll be with us today. Her name is Maurelhena Walles, and she runs Equity and Design. And she's about to join us right here from New York and share with us a little bit about her work running this amazing company here in New York City, but also her whole history of what she's been doing around the world to join us. And here she is. Okay. Maurelhena has an amazing... Oh, hello, how are you?
Good. How are you? No, go ahead. Keep talking.
Oh, well, you're going to hear me say everything that is so amazing about you. So I hope you're ready to blush.
Yes, yes.
Well, in addition to running Equity and Design, I think one of the most amazing things about you, Maurelhena, is your athletic career. So for those of you who don't know, this is my first chance to ever interview an amazing athlete. The 2017 World Masters Athletics track winner in the 60 meters in Korea. And that's just one of your many medals. If I could, I would make you run and demonstrate for us this amazing athleticism. But instead of that, we'll ask you to tell us all about it. But especially just noble, I would say, is one of the words I would choose to describe the work of Maurelhena. She's doing so much work right now with her new company to develop and help us understand the gap between wealth and health, especially in the Bronx, but across New York City, across our country in the United States here, and figuring out how we can do programming that really tackles it on all levels in a sustainable way. So we get to hear all about these amazing things. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Still getting used to the whole, I was telling someone, like, you're so used to doing the work, and when people ask you to like come join them live or to like be on the cover or something, you're like, nah, I'm gonna go take a back seat. So I'm getting used to being in front of the camera and really repping the work that I do.
So crazy to hear like a gold medalist say that it's hard to get used to being in front of the camera. The humility is also noble.
Right. Well,
yeah, go for it.
Well, no, yeah, I was gonna say, like, usually, because when you're on the track, you're hyper focused. And even though you may have anywhere from a couple to thousands in the stand, you're hyper focused on getting to the finish line. So yeah, it's a different stage.
It's one of the things that I just find so fascinating with athletes. Like, I'm somewhat obsessed with like the athlete's mind, because I think just what you said right now, this like incredible ability to like razor focus in on something that's like such a specific goal and just go after it without like any of these distractions or like this multimedia world that we live in. Tell us a little bit about how do you develop that mindset? Like, is it something you're born with? Do you train for it? What are the secrets you can share with us?
Well, it's interesting because it's one of the things with my really good friend and coach. We always start the year off with like, what are we focusing on? And everything that we do is tailored towards that. So everything from your workouts to, what meets you're running to how you're gearing your training sessions is geared towards that goal. And then I've learned in my wiser years how to tailor that goal because life happens, right? And so it's interesting because I always say I use that athlete's mindset to be able to help me focus on any and everything else. And it just comes, I don't know if you're born with it. I don't know if it's just something that just develops over time, but I like working with goals. I like knowing that there's a start and a finish line and putting the work in.
Do you see a relationship, or am I superimposing something that's not there? Do you see a relationship between this idea of like goal setting and how to plan and your entrepreneurial career?
Yeah, definitely. It's that, and a while back I had read this book called I think it's called Being Bold or Be Bold, and it's just about different social entrepreneurs and how they got started. And I'll never forget the mantra, fear means go. And I was like,
Ooh, I like
that is so true. Like what happens to you mentally, physically, right? When fear sets in, when something says like, I can't do this, you become paralyzed, but really it means go. Like that is exactly where you should go. And so I definitely think that it's something that's parallel in terms of entrepreneurship, because it takes that inner voice. I was telling somebody earlier, like there's these moments I have on this entrepreneurship journey where I'm like, all right, I got this, I got this. And then there are other moments you're just kind of banging your head. I was just talking to one of our great sponsors on with our Right to Run program. And I like, there's just moments I was like, oh, no one gets it. And then I'll get an email. I'll get an email that says, the kids are so excited because I'm excited about physical activity. I'm like, okay, universe, I'll stick with it just a little bit longer.
you got to keep sticking with it because we're all following you. So not to put more pressure on, but we're counting on your success to clean up some of our city. Okay, I'm going to ask you so much more about equity and design, but I want to also ask, how did you get involved in running and track in the beginning? How did it find you? How did you find it?
Well, it's definitely my mom. I mean, they didn't coin ADHD or ADD. I was just a really hyperactive child, and my mom was trying to figure out what to do with me. So she would say, let's see how fast you can run to the corner. And I get to the corner and come back. She said, let's see how many times you can do that. And so she just didn't know what to do with all of the energy I had. And then it was one day I was in Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it was this flyer that said Harlem Week, and it had a track meet. And I was like, Ma, can we do it? And she said, yeah. So she signed me up. It was my first track meet at Van Cortlandt Park as a part of Harlem Week. And I was like, Ma, I want to do this. And I'm pretty sure she was like, thank goodness, because I just didn't know what to do with it.
You found your calling. Good.
Yes.
Well, that's like a much more beautiful story. My mom put me in dance, which started my path, but she put me in dance because I kept falling all the time. I was so
Really
graceful that I would just like fall down the street, and my mom was like, gosh, like she's got to figure out like how to walk. Let's try dance lessons. And I definitely did not become an Olympic athlete because of that.
Wow, but it's so interesting how like how like our parents or guardians, those that take care of us, they recognize something. They don't know what it is, but they recognize and sort of nurture us and push us in that direction.
So true. And both of us, for our work, I mean, we're very, kind of very much in the middle of it, where you also see these kids who don't have those parents and don't have those guardians, and then how do organizations or people or mentors try to fill those gaps, or in some cases activities and physical exercise can actually also supplement some of those gaps.
It's funny you said that, because I remember so I grew up on the Upper West Side, and in New York City, and the idea was, or the thought, or the misconception was like, they, must have money. And it's like, no, it was all a part of my dad's design plan, where he knew that that's where the resources were, right? So that's where he picked us up and we moved to. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford those resources. So it was almost like window shopping. And, we I was like, well, I want to go to camp, and I want to join the sports programs, and all of those required money. So I remember the park where we were at Riverside Park Drive, it was like this circle. And I was like, I'm going to hold my own practices. Yes, it's just me. Or, I would go there and just randomly ask kids if they want to play tag or if they want to race. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, just understanding that how at that young age, how to create my own opportunities.
I always thought that you were an athlete and then you became an entrepreneur, but now I know from this story that you're also already an entrepreneur.
Yes, yes. I guess it was always in me.
Definitely. And then tell us about, so if I remember correctly, you also went to university for political science and later television production. True? Not true?
Yes. And so
Okay, you got to connect the dots for us.
so I graduated. I went to Alabama A&M University in HBCU, and I always wanted to be a journalist. And when I got to school, it was like, hey, there's film, there's television, there's all these different multimedias and telecommunication. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. And then it was, my dad just really encouraging me. He says, no matter what you do in life, it's learning how to be diplomatic. So why don't you take up political science? And I just,
wow.
Yeah,
Smart dad.
thank you. So I loved it. And then I always knew I wanted to get my master's. The problem was I wasn't a great test taker. And so I wanted to go to Hunter College, and they were like, well, you need the GRE. And I was like, why? Why? And they were like, well, that's just the standard. Exactly, that's the rule. And so they said, but Brooklyn College has television production and it's more hands-on. And I was like, I guess I'm going to Brooklyn College. I should get accepted first. So I'm gonna go to Brooklyn College. And I did. I did my MFA at Brooklyn College, focused on television production, had an opportunity for over close to 2 years to work with PBS. And it was just such a great experience to understand what goes on behind the scenes in the world of television.
Yeah, I feel like especially today we need to understand what makes up all this media that we keep ingesting in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So now, one of the things, so all of these are seeds of the important work that you're doing today with your company. But, for those of us who are listening and learning from you, there's like a lot of companies, especially in New York, who focus on like the health side, the fitness side. And there's a lot that focus on like economic disparities and how to really try to build up equity. But as far as I know, you're the only company who's really, in a very thoughtful, deliberate way, trying to connect these ideas. Tell us, part of it's in your personal journey, but how did you get to the point where you're like, okay, we're going to make a company about this and like tackle it head on?
Well, I want to give a shout out to Chris. I see him on here. Chris was with me when I was the executive director at Life NYC, and loved the experience. For a little over 7 years, we had the opportunity to design physical activity programming. It was more direct service around youth development, sports, and fitness. And we worked exclusively with the charter schools. I can openly admit and say right now that it was great what we did, but I never knew if we were actually impacting the health disparities that existed in all of the communities we served. I had no clue. I just know that we reached X amount of students. I just know how many programs we had, but I could never connect the dots. And it would get to me. And I remember we started working with the Department of Health, and I found out about the Bronx. This was back in 2014, being number 62 out of 62 New York State counties. And I was like, damn, you know, now we gotta do something. And again, it was more about programming, not really connecting the dots. Fast forward, Fit for Life NYC was sold, it was acquired. And I just started thinking, well, what do I want to do next? And I said, I'm hard on myself. I said, I failed, right? The communities that we were serving, like I failed. I was chasing something. I was chasing the amount of kids we were trying to serve. I was chasing the amount of schools we were in. But the goal was to get everyone healthy, but it wasn't at center stage. And so I was like, nah, I'm gonna do it again. And so it's like track. You're like, oh man, I didn't do too well at that meet. I'm gonna go run, put myself through that pain again, just try again. And so, I'm gonna try it again. And I said, but I'm gonna do it different. I'm gonna let the data, I'm gonna use an equity lens, and that is going to drive my design. I'm not gonna come in and say, you get a basketball team. All right, let's do a soccer team there. Or if that's what you want, I'm gonna ask you why. Mm-hmm. So again, it's a different way. When people come up to me and say, well, oh, can we get your program in for 6 weeks to run our fitness? No. No. Like, why? 6 weeks later, you're right back. Yeah. Right? And you're not really solving the problem. And that's what we're here to do at Equity Design, is to solve a problem.
Yeah. I mean, the work you're doing is like, I know you can see me like, the work you're doing is so important, but I kind of wish you could clone yourself, because the problem that you're describing is also in the international development sector. I mean, everybody kind of knows this from the media, but being inside it, you see communities, areas, parts of the ecosystem of international development that the inefficiencies create the longevity, right? If you actually like cleaned up the system, you would find a final resolution and the problem would be like forever solved. But because of exactly what you're saying, oh, well, we have to provide this program, oh, we have to give food here, we have to provide school materials here, you end up kind of with this broken system that keeps feeding itself. So if you ever would like to clone yourself, if I could perhaps suggest another alternative no, I save New York City.
Well, thank you for that. And I was just reading also what Chris was saying. I appreciate you too, Chris. I think it's interesting. One of the things I sort of fell into with Fit for Life is this mentoring workforce development program, where I started thinking about, like, why not have the people that, live and go to school in the communities we're serving work with us. And, I would always say during our like demos or our like information sessions and our hiring events, like, the work that we do is tough. And the work that we do with Equity Design is tough. It really is. We're in some really challenging communities, some that may not want us, some that are used to the challenges and continue with those barriers. And so how you have two choices. You could either stick with us and go through this journey, we go through this journey together, or I would say, like, I'm gonna take a moment where you could leave. I understand everyone has to pay bills, but I respect people that are in it because they want to see the change in the communities and they want to be that change.
A lot of the people who follow MindLeaps are definitely outside of New York City, many outside of the US. Share with us a little bit about where you see the real gaps today between education, health, and wealth, especially for somebody who doesn't even know New York City.
Wow. So, when I was thinking about our mission right? I said, you know, I really want to be able to show how we can close the gap that exists between health and wealth. So when you think about it, right? If I have a pre-existing condition and a lot of my time is spent going to the doctor, it's spent, you know, I'm putting money towards getting healthy. You know, it's difficult for me to be able to recognize and see that, well, what are some resources that are available to me to close that gap? And so if there are no resources and I'm continuing to come out of pocket, either A, I'm just going to figure it out on my own, right? And not go to the doctor, and whatever happens, happens, right? Or B, I'm going to invest. But if I don't have money to invest,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's a part where people don't understand the connection between health and wealth. And people don't understand the connection between health, wealth, and life expectancy. So when the Department of Health came out with their community profiles and identified East New York, Brownsville, East Harlem, and all of the Bronx, you know, with this gap and these disparities, you start to dive in a little bit deeper, right? We you know, one of our program associates and we went to a school in Queens, and what we noticed was the school had like a campus. So here in New York City, right, for a school to be called a campus, that's huge, right? Yeah. Usually like schools in New York City have like 2 and 3 other schools inside their building, right? But never a campus. So this school in Queens, it had a campus, it had like banners, and this was an elementary school. And Chris and I grew up in New York City. We were like, whoa, where are we? And so what we realized was, wow, so the property tax, right, and the income of those that resided in that community, right, they were able to afford to be able to say to this school, like, we're going to give you the resources because our children are attending this school. And so they were residential, right? So they owned those homes. We literally walked 2 blocks, and this other school, it was no campus, it was dreary, and it was more apartment complex, and it was in an under-resourced community. And we're like, wait a second, they're like 2 blocks away from each other. I didn't understand. So we can't get those same resources. And when we asked the school that had more of the resources, well, are you going to help that school? They were like, no, no, no. And you're like, are you kidding me? So it's the gap is real, right? And so now if I grow up and I'm in this school and I'm like, well, I don't have any resources. My books are outdated. My gymnasium, the floor is warping. I get basketballs that are deflated. I can't afford anything. How am I going to feel?
Right. The whole path starts going backwards or downward from the beginning.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for taking the time to explain that example in such detail. I think our friends around the world who don't know our culture and don't know our country can visualize that. And you know, when we travel, you've traveled around the world for your work and for your athleticism. You know, sometimes people think of America as like, it's all this one image. And even in Queens, right? Like even in this one community, 2 blocks away, like that's the reality.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's interesting. One of the things that when we go away and we travel international, you know, I like seeing the communities, and we always kind of just say, like, you know, we compare it to New York City. But it's just so interesting how in 2022, right, the segregation, it still exists, but no one calls it, you know, but it still exists, especially within our school system.
I just applaud you so much for bringing light to this issue. I mean, there's just not a way to amplify the message loud enough and to fix the systems fast enough to repair our negative history. And we're very fortunate to have people like you who, like you say, are willing to take the hard path, willing to say no when you need to say no because it's the right thing to do. You are such a role model in so many ways.
Thank you.
Okay, so tell us in the few minutes that we have left, what does the future hold for equity and design, for these gaps that we're talking about? How do we build to that brighter future with these kids and with this educational system and with all of this history that we're trying to fix as we move forward?
So our goal is sustainability, right? We want to be able to help schools, help organizations, and help communities see how can we maintain this on our own, right? Definitely continuing with the direct services, but should I have a gap in my budget, right? Should I not be able to hire other individuals to perform this work, especially around health, wellness, physical activity? Can we sustain it? So our goal is to be able to build out culture, right? Our goal is to be able to make it just automatic that, our school has a walking program for its teachers. Our school has equipment, right, that we maintain on our own and that we keep safe. Our school is always thinking about policies we can interject right in our school. So we want to be able to change the community's mindset around how they see physical activity, how they engage and interact with physical activity. Our ultimate goal is to be able to hold corporations responsible. Listen, to be able to see that our communities are more than just hashtags. The color of our skin, our culture is more than just hashtags. We want to be able to, why is it that, we have trackers that we work with at one of our partner schools in the Bronx. And, but when you go into a lot of the stores, right, no one is selling fitness trackers,
No.
right? So, it's like, I want to make sure that these companies, these corporations are giving access, right? Because that's what it's about. If I have access, I'm empowered. I have an opportunity to engage with the technology. So we want to be able to close that divide. We want to hold them responsible, and we want them to give more than just money. So that's the next 5 years. That's where we see equity design.
Well, let me just remind you, after you achieve that in the next 5 years, please, you have to do that for the international development field. Because everything you're saying is just like check, check, check. Or at the minimum, you have to write a book to tell the rest of the world how to do it.
But to your point, right, and even when you were saying check, like, we just want to be more than just a box you check, right? We want to be more than just, and I'm not like on running just has been so good to like realizing this vision, and they've just put so much resources in helping us. And so it's not just about, again, giving us money. It's about giving us the opportunity to say, hey, this is a resource. This is a gap you have. This is a resource we have. Let's work together around it. So I wish more corporations were as responsible as on, and maybe they are. I just don't know them. But if you're out there, please, I'd be welcome to have that conversation.
Completely. I mean, the corporations, you hear, if we were sending a message to them, I mean, you hear equity and design talking about taking the hard path and doing the things that are really, really difficult, because in the end, that makes this sustainable cultural change. And just imagine if the power of the corporations walked that path with you, how that would amplify and speed up this impact that's absolutely necessary for us to move forward. So yes, we're gonna hashtag corporations on this interview.
Okay.
Maurelhena, thank you so much. It is always a privilege to get to listen to you, hear from you, learn from you. I think what you're doing is so important, and I can only wish you the utmost luck with it, and hope that you allow us to keep following your journey so we can gather like these little lessons that we can apply in our own little lives.
Oh, I appreciate you. I'm gonna do this virtual high five right here.
Thank you so much for being with us. Everybody, check out Equity and Design. We'll put it in the links here, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thank you so much, Maurelhena.
Thank you, Rebecca. Bye-bye.
Thank you.